Hi everybody! Almost everyone, young and old, enjoys counting down the days to Christmas, and this year we really need to have some extra cheer. So I've done this rather special Advent Nativity Theatre as a different way to count the days down to Christmas. It's quite a unique project, but it makes a very pretty decoration for Advent, and you can build up your figures one by one through the days leading up to Christmas Eve, and by Christmas Eve you will have a complete nativity. Now it's based on sliders, and I have created this using dies from a unbranded Create a Scene Christmas Nativity set that I've got, but you can use branded ones. You can use any nativity figures that you like, including downloading them from free clip art and free cutting them. But I will show you how to create this very unique project, which I think will delight everybody and be something extra special this Christmas. It's inexpensive to make, and the only thing it needs is your time. I'm not going to say that it's a very quick project, but it's rewarding to make, and it's going to be rewarding to give, and will bring Christmas cheer to people when they need it most this year. You do need a large die cutting machine for this. I use a Gemini, but a Big Shot Plus would work well, and if you want to have a standard machine, then reduce the sizes appropriately. So to get started, I'm doing the backdrop, arch and figures. And first of all, the backdrop. I've used this printed photograph onto photographic paper taken from a painting that I did. It's a little watercolour, and I wanted to have it on shiny paper, so I photographed it, put it on my computer, and then printed it out as an 8 by 10 photograph on the photographic sheet. You could use anything you like, and it's entirely up to you, but this is what I've chosen. I've also cut out two pieces, 21.5 centimetres by 21 centimetres, approximately 8 inches square, one for the back to go behind the photographic paper and one to make the arch from. And to make the arch, I've got this frame die which comes with the Create a Scene Christmas Nativity, and it is only 12 centimetres wide by about 13 centimetres high. I've got it at 2 centimetres from the bottom, and I want to cut it to 19 centimetres high. And so I have taken it up and I'm drawing around it and freehand cutting. So I cut out the bottom and then freehand the top, and this is what it's going to look like. So I've got a nice big arch for all my actors to hide behind for the nativity scene. I want to decorate the front, so I've got this cracked ice embossing folder from Crafter's Companion, and I'm running that through my Gemini machine and just embossing the front to make it decorative. And then what I need to do is I just need to strengthen the back, and the way to do that is I use corrugated cardboard. Corrugated cardboard is lovely because it's strong but it's very light, and you can cut it to any size and shape that you like very easily and stick it in place using double-sided tape, all-purpose glue or PVA glue, whatever your choice is. So I've cut out these strips to strengthen that back, and eventually I'll probably cover it with a bit of card just to make it look nice. So that is the front of my theatre constructed. Now I'm going to make my figures, and for this again comes from the Create a Scene Christmas Nativity, and these are the central ones, all come from that. And I've only got the one camel, but I can be quite versatile. I'm going to cut out 3. I've got 2 kings, I'm going to cut out 3. I'm going to cut out 2 shepherds, 5 sheep and just 1 donkey. And I can decorate them how I like. I've also got 2 angels I'm going to be using from an unbranded set, and from Joanna Sheen Bethlehem silhouette I've got the lovely star that I'm going to be using. Now I want to colour mine, and I've done them with watercolours, but there's nothing to stop you doing it with markers or inks or whatever you choose. As you can see, I've cut out stems on all of them because except the angels, and those I will be sticking onto pull handles for the sliders. Now I'm going to be heat embossing all of them. I'll show you how I do it. I'm just pressing the donkey down onto my clear embossing pad, my Versamark watermark pad, and then sprinkling it with clear embossing powder and using my heat tool. And that gives not only extra strength to the figures, but it gives them a lovely shine, and also it increases the intensity of the colouring. So it's a win-win situation, and worthwhile taking the time and trouble just to run your heat tool, if you've got one, over the figures. It's not essential, but I think it adds to them. And I don't bother embossing the card stalk at the bottom. Now I'm starting from front to back, and the sheep and the shepherds come in first, and I'm doing them in modules, and each module is going to have 2 or 3 slides on it. If you do any more, you run out of space. So I want to have a nice wavy edge. This is going to be the front module, and it's ultimately only going to be 3.5 centimetres high. But I'm going to cut this grassy edge, and I'm using a Sue Wilson die, which I'm partially die cutting. So I would have my cutting plate at the bottom, then the card, put these card stacks on top, missing the base of the die so it doesn't cut, and then I just move it along the card to get the grassy effect that I'm after. I've done it on a bigger sheet of card because when I split it into 2, it means I'm going to have 2 grassed edged cards that I will be using both of them. So as I say, this one's 3.5 centimetres high. Now I'm going to cut the slider just 0.5 centimetre in from that right hand edge to 9.5 centimetres long, and it is 2.5 centimetres from the base of that piece of card, and that gives me the slide that I will then create a gully for the sheep that I'm positioning in there to run along. And of course the sheep needs a pull handle, which I'm going to be sticking on in a moment, but I'm just showing you how he runs in the gully and what he will look like. And at the edge it'll be hidden behind the wings of that theatre, and it'll look quite effective with the grass waving as sheep in their fields should have. And now I've cut a tiny strip of corrugated card that is just 0.4 centimetres wide, and I'm sticking that above the slide cut, making sure that it doesn't overhang, that it opens freely, and that the sheep can slide in it quite easily. And I'm just slotting him in. Of course I've got to make the bottom edge of the gully, but first of all I'm going to stick the pull handle on. Now you need 16 of these pull handles, and I cut out 32 strips of cards about 26 centimetres long by 0.5 centimetre wide, and stuck them together to make them firm for when you pull. And I'm going to stick that in place along that stalk at the bottom of the sheep. Now all of the stalks I've cut out with my fingers are slightly random, and I've made sure they're bigger than I need because I can trim them to the width of the pull handle after I've stuck them in place. If you've got figures coming in from the right hand side, stick them on the right hand edge of the pull handles, and if they're coming in from the left hand side, stick them on the left hand edge of the pull handles. I say it because I often do it wrong, and so it's a little aid memoir to help, so that unlike me, you'll get it right first time. Once you've done that, then the next thing to do is to check that the slider actually works, which it does, and then I'm going to have to create the bottom part of the gully. And in order to do that, I just measure below that pull handle and see what gap is left, and then cut out a piece of corrugated card that fits to the bottom but leaves a tiny bit of wriggle room for the pull handle. Once I've done that, then I can move on to the second card, which is 3 centimetres high. I cut the slide from the right hand side again to 7.5 centimetres, and it's about 2 centimetres from the base of the card. I'm going to construct the gully in exactly the same way, using corrugated card, slotting the figure on his pull handle in, measuring the bottom, and sticking another piece of card in. Once I've done that, then all I have to do is stick it in place to the back piece with the sheep, and again I'm checking the slide works. And on this particular occasion I'm going to be using double-sided tape to stick it in place, but you could use PVA glue, or you could use multi-purpose all-purpose glue, whatever you like. Now for this I've got the double-sided tape on, and as you can see I've left some of the card free of glue, and that is where it overlaps the sheep on its slider, because I don't want any glue to get on that and stop the sheep sliding. So wherever you're positioning a slide card in front of another, just make sure that the slider channel for the lower card is free of glue so you don't stop it sliding, and I do that for every piece that I've got. Each time I do it, obviously I check that the slider works nicely before moving on to the next part of the module. And for the front piece of the module, I've got a piece of card that is 2.5 centimetres high. It's got a wavy edge again. I create a slide that is on the left hand side. It's 8 centimetres long and it's 1.5 centimetres from the bottom of the card. I've made the gully. I stick it in place, once again avoiding the slider this time that's got the shepherd in, and then I can make sure that everything is going to move really nicely, and that will complete module 1. I've done some crib sheet measurements that you can stop the video and copy out if you so wish. Module 2 will go behind module 1 and it's going to be a little bit deeper. So for this one, I've got a 4 centimetre high card, and I've cut from the right hand side to 10 centimetres, and it's 3.5 centimetres from the bottom. I've created the module in exactly the same. This one's going to have a sheep in it, and I've put the slider in, and I've got check that it pulls quite nicely before moving on to the middle piece. The middle piece is going to be 3.5 centimetres high, and it's got a wavy edge, and it's got a sheep coming in from the left hand side with a slide cut of 13 centimetres, 2.5 centimetres from the bottom. So I've made the gully, and I make the sheep slot in it in just the same way as I've done before, and I'm going to stick it in place on that back piece, making sure that I don't get any glue on the back portion of the first module where the slide is, and that is really quite important. Then I move on to the front piece, which is just 3 centimetres high, and the slide cut is again on the left hand side, this time just to 7 centimetres, and it is 2 centimetres up from the base of the card, and I make the module in exactly the same way and stick it in place. And here's the crib sheet for module 2. Part of the project, I'm making the wings, and it's going to be important to have them to hide all the other figures behind. Every theatre has wings where actors can stand, and this one is no exception. I'm making them into 2 hills either side. They're 8.5 centimetres high, free cut, and a 4 centimetre high bit in the middle, and this is how the front section is going to look. Now I've got one more sheep to add, which I will make a slide piece for afterwards, but first of all I want to just show you how the camel will slide and hide behind the hill. And then I want to decorate it. So I've got an unbranded tree die, which I'm going to cut out a couple of those pieces just to make nice foliage embellishments on the back piece on the wings, before cutting out a 3.5 centimetre high piece of card with a slide that is 3 centimetres from the base and 10 centimetres from the right hand edge for the sheep, and I will make it in exactly the same manner and stick it in place like I've done for the other modules. And here is the complete one done, and it'll just look rather nice that with the shepherds and the sheep in their fields behind the theatre arch. So that completes the shepherds and that scene, and I will be moving on to the kings and the camels. Here's the crib sheet for that last section. I'm going to be doing less detail now because the principles are all exactly the same and all the dimensions are given on the crib sheets at the end of each section. So now I'm moving on to the kings and the camels, and here I've got 3 kings and 3 camels. The one king is riding the camel. I stuck them together to form a single figure, and this is the front section, which is about 5 centimetres high. It's got a nice wavy edge that I've free cut on the back. It's got one king and camel coming in from the right hand side and one coming in from the left hand side, and I've made them in exactly the same way with the corrugated card and the gullies, and stuck them over, making sure all those sliders move freely. And then once I have completed that section, then I'm going to make the bit that is behind with the last two figures. So I've got another king and a camel, both of whom are going to come in from the left hand side, both of whom have got free cut wavy edged card of similar height to the ones in front, because the depth of the theatre will show them quite nicely. And then once I've stuck them in place, having made their gullies, I can stick the front section to them to complete that bit. And here is the crib section with all the dimensions that you need to complete the module that I have just shown. So now I'm moving on to the Nativity module, which is at the back, and here I've taken the Create a Scene die and cut out the stable with Mary and Joseph, and I've coloured it using watercolours, heat embossed it. It's about 14.5 centimetres high, and that will form the backdrop for the overall scene. And it has no sliders on its own, but I am going to be putting barn doors in front of it to hide away until Christmas Eve. And to do that, I've used this piece of waste card from when I cut it out, and I will use it as a template to make the barn doors. And I cut them out to 6.5 centimetres depth, and that will sit very nicely, as you can see, in front of the nativity scene, hiding it away until Christmas Eve. I will cut up the middle to make 2 barn doors, and they'll be pulled in opposite directions to reveal the nativity. I've cut out a piece of card of similar height to the background, and that I'm going to put the slider in for the barn doors centrally and give the measurements on the crib sheet. And then I've cut out another piece of similar height with a slide cut coming in from the left hand side, where the donkey is going to come in and make his presence felt as well. And I do that in exactly the same way as I've done all the other sliders. Now, for the barn doors, I've scored them using my Fisker's scorer that comes with the trimmer to make embossing of rough planks, because stable doors would be rough planks. And then what I'm going to do is I want them overhanging the slide cut. So I'm turning them over, and I'm going to make little raised sections using 2.5 centimetre wide card doubled up. I've stuck them together just to lift the card off the slide and away from the leg, which fits onto the pull handle, as you'll see in a minute. So I stick them in place using all-purpose glue. Then I add the legs, which are longer than they need to be, but I trim them down to size when I add the handles, and stick them in place also. Very easy to do and very effective. And that means that when I have done them, I can slot them in. Here's a demo. I'll put them in the slide cut. They just slot neatly over that cut, and you're able to pull them across backwards and forwards. And when you turn them over, the leg that you've got sticking down overhangs the back of the card, and I add the handle and stick that in place, and then I will trim the leg to the same depth as the handle, and I will do that for both of them. And in this instance, they can both fit in the same slide cut, because they're going to be moving in opposite directions, and that is very useful. So here it is assembled, and I can demonstrate the opening of those doors, which will reveal the nativity on the Christmas Eve. The next bit is going to be doing the donkey, and as I say, I made him in just the way as all the other sliders, and he slots in really beautifully, and I used the corrugated card at the back, and then I will stick him in place. And there's the module showing the usual way of construction. I'm going to slot him in place and stick him over the barn doors, avoiding that central slider where the doors go in and out. I've also put an extra piece of corrugated card on the front to act as a spacer between the donkey and the kings and camels, which I can then stick in place over that. I'm also going to be putting an extra piece of card in front of that first king and camel to space that module from the shepherds. And you must always make sure that they're straight, because that's got to stand up at the end. So position them carefully. And that's where I just put in a single extra piece. You might even do a double piece of corrugated card to act as your spacer, before you then add the front module of sheep and shepherds to create the scene. Here's the crib sheet that you need for all the dimensions for that nativity module section. The final collection of sliders are going to be for the night sky with the angels and the stars, so it's module 6. And for this I've cut down my photographic paper, making sure that the scene fits nicely. Then I've cut out 3 slides, one for the star at the top and then 2 for the angels slightly lower down. And they're coming in from different sides, and I've made legs for the stars and the angels in just the same way as I did for the barn doors, and they're going to slot over those cut out slides. I'll just show you. There we are, there's the star in place. And then when you turn them over, you straighten them up and you can attach your pull handle, making sure you're doing them in the right direction. And here's one that I made. I've trimmed the leg that was on the angel down to the same size as the pull handle, and then I can slot it in very easily through the backdrop card, and the handle will slide through and the angel will slot over the card, and you can move her backwards and forwards very easily. And I've done the same for the other 2 as well. Of course, you have to be careful to make sure that those slide cuts don't mean that the pull handles interfere with each other, so measure it out carefully. Then you're using your corrugated card to make gullies again, being very careful to make sure that you don't impinge on any of the slide cuts. Having done the fine one there, I've cut out a nice big piece of corrugated card, the full width of the backdrop, and that will create all the gullies and give strength to the backdrop for the back of the theatre. The final bit is to neaten it up with the second piece of 21 centimetre card, and here's the crib sheet that shows you all those cuts and where to put them. So all that's left now to do is the final assembly, which is always a fun bit. And you do need to trim your sliders, because I've made them much longer than they need to be. And I trim them down to about 2 centimetres. And as you can see, I've added little tabs on each one with random numbers to pull. I did start with the star being number 1, because how can the shepherds and the wise men follow if there's no star in the sky? So I tried to do things sequentially with the Christmas story. But other than that, I've randomised the numbers. With 16 figures, some of the numbers are double, which means that the players have 2 moves. Now I have put the numbers in a small font onto a piece of card that I printed off from my computer, and then I've die cut them. I've used little leaf shapes, but of course you could use any shape that you like, and stuck them in place once I've trimmed those stems. Now when you pull the pull handles, if it's a double number, it comes out to a green line that I've marked on the stem, and then the second line will be red, so that you know exactly where you want to position your figures within your Advent scene. And I've done the same on all of the ones that have double numbers. Once I've done that, I am going to be positioning the nativity in place on its backdrop. I've put some corrugated card strip at the front to space the front scene from the theatre arch, and I've done exactly the same behind the stable as well, to space it from the backdrop. And then once I've done that, I stick it in place using all-purpose glue, because I think that's a little bit stronger, although double-sided tape works perfectly well as well. And then all I've got to do is put the proscenium arch on the front. Now that's quite a narrow strip, so I know that that isn't going to be enough on its own. It needs some strengthening at the top. So I've taken 2 pieces of corrugated card back to back, the depth of the nativity scene, which is 5.5 centimetres for mine, and I've stuck it in place at the top to form a joist which gives strength and stability to your scene. And then all you need to do is embellish the front how you like, and your project is finished. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this rather unique approach to an advent calendar and feel inspired to do something similar yourself. It's been a pleasure taking you through it, and I hope it's inspired you to do something a bit different to bring joy and pleasure to the Christmas season for your friends and family. Thank you so much for watching.